Just going to give folks a few seconds to come in from the waiting room. As a reminder, when you are entering from the waiting room, please keep yourself on mute unless and until you will be speaking or testifying before the board this morning. Great. Good morning. This is a hearing before the licensing board for the city of Boston. Today is Tuesday, April 26th, 2022. Today's hearing is being held pursuant to temporary amendments to the open meeting law. That is what allows us to meet virtually. Today's hearing will be recorded and posted to the City of Boston website. Before I review procedural matters, I will introduce Chairwoman Kathleen Joyce.
Good morning. My name is Kathleen Joyce. I'm chair of the licensing board, and today I'm joined by Commissioner Kiana Saxon and Commissioner Liam Curran.
Thank you. Please ensure that your audio and visuals are working properly. I will call each item in the order that it appears on today's agenda. I will then ask who is present on behalf of the licensee, who is present on behalf of the Boston Police Department, and whether there are any other individuals with firsthand knowledge of the alleged incident. I will then swear in all parties. After that, the police report will be read into the record, after which the licensee or the representative will have the opportunity to make a brief statement, followed by questions by the chairwoman and the commissioners. Again, all testimony will be limited only to individuals with firsthand personal knowledge of the alleged incident. Begin with item number 1 on this morning's agenda, calling Johnny's on the Side LLC, doing business as West End Johnny's, located at 138 Portland Street. Date of the alleged incident, November 17th, 2021. Drug use on premise in violation of Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 64. Who is present on behalf of the licensee?
Good morning, Commissioners, Madam Chairperson, Attorney Seamus O'Kelly, representing the licensee. I expect Mr. Karen is already here, and I expect to have another witness, a manager, Dana Roy.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, it's under Caitlin Medlick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who is present on behalf of the Boston Police Department?
Is there Detective Mark Walsh? If not, Lieutenant Detective Troy from the Boston Police Department.
Thank you. Are there any other individuals with firsthand knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify this morning? Okay, can you all please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Lieutenant Troy, you may proceed with the police report.
Reading from police report written by Cadet Martinez, was received on the front door of District 1 about 5 p.m. on Wednesday, November 17th, 2021, while assigned to the front desk of District 1, Cadet Martinez received a walk-in report to investigate property. The victim, Caroline Sweeney, stated that on Friday, November 5th, 2021, the victim and her roommate took a lift to West End Johnny's at 138 Portland Street, Boston, Mass. The victim arrived at West End Johnny's about 9:39 p.m. The victim stated that over the course of 2 hours while in the basement bar of West End Johnny's, she consumed 2 alcoholic beverages. According to the victim, the first and second round of drinks were bought by friends with the victim. Then the bartender, who the victim does not know, gave the victim a free shot. The victim then stated while dancing downstairs, she recalled a group of men who the victim was not familiar with, buying the victim and her friend rounds of shots. The victim stated these shots tasted very different than the first shot she had at the beginning of the night. Victim stated her friend remembered the drink tasting salty. About 30 minutes after taking the shots with the unknown men, the victim and her friend began to feel stomach sick and went to the restroom. After about 30 minutes in the restaurant, the victim stated about 12:40 a.m. they stumbled outside West End Johnny's. The victim was able to contact one of her roommates who was able to pick the victim up. The victim states she does not remember much of the night after that point. The victim's friends told her that she had to be carried inside of her apartment and was vomiting a lot before getting into the car. The victim's friends also performed a sternal rub to her chest, to which the victim was not able to respond to the stimulation. The victim spent all evening and some of the morning in and out of consciousness. The following morning, November 6, 2021, she was a bit blurry to the victim. It was reported to the victim that a friend called West End Johnny's to report the incident. The victim's friend spoke to the general manager, Dana Roy, who stated he would review the video footage and get back to her friend about anything he discovered. On November 6, 2021, about 2 p.m., the victim went to Target at Old State Road in South Bay and purchased a home drug test, easy at home multi-drug screen. The victim, the results of the test showed signs of benzodiazepines in her system. Detectives were notified. That's the extent of that report, and that's the extent of the initial report there.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Attorney O'Kelly, would you like to address the alleged incident?
Thank you, Attorney Green. Commissioners, this is an alleged incident that occurred on November the 5th, 2021. The alleged victim, or a friend of hers, contacted the establishment the next day, and as you heard read from the report, spoke to the general manager, Dana Roy. I expect the evidence in this case will show that Mr. Roy immediately contacted the owner and the licensee, John Caron, also present, and that Mr. Caron immediately contacted the Boston Police Department himself, because as an owner and a licensee, he was worried about this allegation and he wanted to make sure that they were handling it in a correct manner. You'll hear further evidence that the Boston Police, I believe it may have been Detective Gallagher, but there were certainly a number of Boston Police representatives, came to West End Johnny's and viewed videotape for quite some time to see if they could establish what, if anything, went on that evening. You'll also hear evidence, I believe, that Mr. Caron met with the alleged victim's father and assured her that they would do everything they could to come to the bottom of this. The ownership and management, and also I believe you'll hear evidence that the Boston Police had a meeting with the staff of the premises, because as I stated earlier, the ownership was concerned because they'd had a previous allegation at Halloween, October the 30th, 2021, which this board has already disposed of. So they were concerned about this alleged violation of the licensing laws and respectfully got to work in it immediately. So I would like to call the first witness here, the manager, Dana Roy. Mr. Roy, you've already been sworn in this matter, correct?
Correct.
Is it true, Mr. Roy, that you received a call from an individual the morning after this alleged incident, namely November 6th of 2021?
Yes, that is true.
And what was the nature of that call?
She called me to tell me that her friend was allegedly roofied at West End Johnny's. I remember speaking to her. I remember being extremely alarmed because, as you said, that it was 2 weeks in a row that someone was making these accusations. I remember calling John right away, saying, what's going on? We need to get in front of this. And I remember John telling me that he called Detective Gallagher, and we were trying to get out in front of it and trying to figure out what was going on as quickly as possible.
Very good. And were you present when the members of the Boston Police Department arrived at the licensed establishment at some future point?
Yes.
And what occurred when they arrived?
Well, we reviewed video cameras from the evening and tried to figure out piece by piece, following the cameras around to see if we could see anything happen.
And did you see anything unusual from your review of the videotape?
No, we couldn't see. I mean, I personally couldn't see anything or pinpoint an exact time when anything happened.
And is it fair to state that the Boston Police subsequently addressed the staff at West End Johnny's?
Yes.
And what was the nature of that address or meeting with the Boston Police Department?
At that time, we were just wanting to be really diligent and make sure the staff was aware of what was happening. Make sure everybody was paying attention. If there was anything happening, that they were noticing it, making it aware to John or myself, just trying to put an end to what was happening. Just make sure everybody was on the same page. Everybody was being diligent. Everybody was trying to keep their eyes out to see if they could catch this happening.
Very good. I have no further questions of Mr. Roy at this point. The commissioners may have questions, or you may wish me to just briefly have Mr. Karen testify. Mr. Karen.
Karen.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Mr. Karen, for the record, you are John Karen, the licensee and one of the owners of West and Johnny's, correct?
Correct.
And you've already been sworn, sir. Yes?
Yes. Yeah.
You've heard Mr. Roy's testimony here this morning, and you heard my statements to the commissioners earlier. It's fair to state that as soon as you received the complaint of this allegation, that you contacted the police department, is that right?
Yeah, Dana called me. I was actually on my way in. It was Sunday brunch, and I was running a few minutes late. I got there. I had the girl that called phone number, and I returned the phone call. I did not get her. I left a message. And, after talking with Dana, I said I better call Sergeant Gallagher. I called, left a message, got a call back, and they thought it was the same incident from the week before. I said, I don't think so. And this seems to be two girls. And then that was the end of the call. The father showed up of not the girl who called, that was her friend, but the other girl. And I sat on the couches with him and talked, and said I had already contacted the police, and I told him where the police station was, which was just around the corner, and gave him the phone number and name of the police involved, and he left. He was grateful. And then we did review footage extensively, not seeing anything. Sergeant Moy's suggestion, and I talked to the captain because it was the second week. I suggested they come in and we talk to the staff before the night gets going, so we'd have everyone there. I had security, bartenders, everyone. And the police, Sergeant Moy talked with everyone, and I also said we want to get to the bottom of this. If it is happening, security, everyone should be watching on their toes. I said if it does happen to be one of you that is doing this, because we had no idea that you would not only lose your job, but you would be prosecuted. And yeah, Sergeant Moy was great with the staff, and that was it.
Thank you. I have nothing further of this witness. The commissioners may have questions. Please stay on the line for those questions, if any.
Thank you. Chairwoman Joyce, do you have any questions?
Yes, the testimony was that the manager and owner or one of them reviewed video. Can you share with the board what you reviewed and what was observed in the video? And if the victim was seen taking shots in the video?
You couldn't see them taking shots in the video. I just tried to follow her around from point A to point B to point C, and trying to see any interaction with a man, and trying to find that person's face, and trying to see if you could physically see him putting anything in a drink, and you couldn't definitively see any of that.
Were you able to observe her drinking?
Yeah, you could see her with a drink in her hand. Yeah.
Okay. And what else were you able to determine? Were you able to determine how long she was there, how many drinks she had? Anything?
I couldn't determine how many drinks she had. It was, it's difficult to, when there's, 400 people in there, to exactly follow her the whole time, but she was there for a few hours.
Okay.
Sergeant Gallagher and the other, they were there for a long time. We sat and watched their every move.
Okay, thank you. Sergeant Gallagher, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, ma'am. We were down there actually investigating the first incident, and Mr. Karen and his staff informed us of the possible second incident as they dealt with the two girls outside that night. There was no police report at the time, and subsequently I was contacted by one of the father's friends, and I urged them to go down to District 1, and they did. And they did take the report. We did review tape. His system has been updated, but at the time was the older system. It's a busy place. Really couldn't see anything there that gave us any inclination to who did anything.
Okay. You testified you went down to, while you were down there, they informed you about the second incident based upon seeing the two women outside?
Correct. The two women came outside. Staff, we talked to the staff, front door staff. They noticed that they're in distress. They gave them some water, and they went to call for help or something. They turned around and they'd already left. And so they were aware of it. They informed us of it, all this before the police report was actually written.
So you were notified of a second incident before the police report was by management? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Commissioner Curran, Commissioner Saxon, do you?
Yes, what changes or improvements did you make to your policies or practices after the first incident? I know it was only a week apart, but did you have any conversations with staff, or can you just tell me what you did?
Yes, we had several conversations with all the staff, individually with staff members in that longtime employees, to notice if they've seen anything with security. Honestly, I sat there and watched the videotapes, watched the bartenders serving people literally all night just to see if I could see anything happening. We were all very taken back by this whole situation. It was very scary to us. We took it very seriously. Like I said, we talked to individual staff members, staff collectively. We really took this very seriously. It was very scary to me personally. At that point, we've only been open again for like 3 or 4 months. And we just, didn't want anything to happen to put a bad light on us.
Well, we had tips training for everyone. It was required soon after.
Commissioner Curran, any questions?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Any further questions from the board at this time?
And did you have the same bartender just coincidentally?
Shoot, I don't. What do you mean?
Bartender both nights of both of those incidents.
We have 6 bartenders, and yeah, they're usually the same 6 pretty much every single week. For they're all still there actually.
It was different floors, from what I remember.
Yeah, I think one was on the upstairs, and yeah, that's true. One was the first one was on the main floor, and the second one was on the lower floor, and the different bartenders on each floor that week. So.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, the board will take this under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Item number 2 on this morning's agenda has been continued and will be heard at the next available hearing date. Calling item number 3, Lansdowne Boston Restaurant LLC, doing business as House of Blues, located at 15 to 41 Lansdowne Street. Date of the incident, January 8th, 2022, assault and battery, patron on patron, in violation of Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 64, and Chapter 265, Section 13A. who is present on behalf of the licensee.
Good morning, Attorney Green, Dennis Quilty, attorney representing the licensee. With me this morning, the manager of record, Nick Byer, and Kevin Resende, who's the operations manager for the House of Blues. Good morning.
Thank you. And who is present on behalf of the Boston Police Department?
Detective Berlino Felix.
And Officer Sean Monahan.
Oh, Sean.
Hey, Felix.
Thank you. Are there any other individuals with firsthand knowledge of the incident who wish to testify this morning?
Myself, Randy Robbins.
And Richard Frazier.
I'm sorry, Sergeant Detective Keenan here. We talking about the same incident? I have an incident on January 11th regarding Ms. Robbins and
Yeah.
That's the next item on the agenda.
That's the next one.
okay,
Okay,
so
so-
those two witnesses will be on the next one.
Great. So we'll call that in a few minutes after we get through this one. Detective Felix, are you able to put your camera on so we can swear you in? Perfect. All right, great. Can you all please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. And who will be reading the police report into the record?
Officer Sean Monahan.
Great, you may go ahead.
This is January 8th, correct? The
Yes,
report
this is
from
January
8th. Okay. About 9:07 p.m. on Saturday, January 8th, 2022, P.O. Monahan and P.O. Mulvey responded to a call for an assault and battery in progress at 15 Lansdowne Street, House of Blues. Also responding was P.O. Lang and P.O. Linane and P.O. Kearney. Officers were directed by the Channel 5 dispatcher that the caller/victim was following the alleged suspect out of the House of Blues in the area of Van Ness Street. Officers were able to locate the caller and the suspect in the area of Van Ness and Ipswich Street. Officers spoke to the caller, identified as Jill Thomas. Thomas stated that she was in a bathroom stall of the women's room at the House of Blues. And then an unknown male suspect, later identified as Christopher Fish, kicked the door open. Thomas stated that the door struck her in the head while she was trying to exit the stall. Thomas also stated that there were other women in the bathroom at the time. Officers asked if Thomas wanted medical attention, and Thomas denied EMS. Thomas stated that the suspect did not say anything to her. Officers also spoke to the House of Blues security, Jason Davies. Davies stated that Thomas told him about the incident and that he was able to see security video of the suspect entering the women's bathroom, but nothing further about the incident. And that he would save for any follow-up. Davies stated that he then escorted the suspect and the other unknown female from the House of Blues. Davies stated that the unknown female had been cut off from being served alcohol earlier in the night due to being overly intoxicated. Davies said that the male could not find his wife and was concerned for her. Davies said that he did not want either of the parties to return to the House of Blues, but that Thomas was free to return. Officers then spoke to the suspect, Christopher Fish, and his wife, Allison Fish. It appeared that Allison Fish was under the influence of alcohol, was slurring her speech, and was unsteady on her feet while speaking with officers. Christopher stated that he and his wife were at the House of Blues, and at one point he became separated from his wife. Christopher stated that something to the effect that he was concerned for his wife's well-being, and he began looking for her in the women's bathroom. Christopher stated that he found Allison in the women's room. Christopher then stated he was trying to get Allison and himself back on a party bus that had brought them to the House of Blues and to head home. Officers informed Christopher and Allison that they were not to return to the House of Blues, to which they agreed. All parties informed that a report will be filed, and Sergeant Johnson was notified of the incident. That was the end of the report.
Thank you, Officer. Attorney Quilty, would you like to address the alleged incident?
If I may I just inquire of the officer?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Officer Monahan, your report presumably indicates that the perpetrator here was the husband of the Christopher Fish and Allison Fish were husband and wife, and that Christopher Fish was looking for his wife when this incident occurred.
Yes.
Okay. So she apparently was in the same bathroom and he went in to find her and had this altercation, if you will, with the other woman. Is that about what happened?
Yes, that sounds about right.
And did the staff, Mr. Byer and Mr. Resende and the staff cooperate with you?
I believe at the scene, we only spoke to Jason Davies. I believe my
Okay.
partner spoke to him about the incident because he had spoken to Christopher and Allison Fish. Well, he spoke to Christopher Fish when he was looking for his wife. He kind of informed him that he couldn't find her and he was looking for her. And then he followed them outside of the House of Blues because I think he realized that that the victim had called 911.
Okay. And he did tell you that he knew the victim had already called 911, is that correct?
I don't know if he knew that or not. I believe he saw her on the phone and I think he might have assumed that she was on the phone with 911.
Okay, thank you, sir. And Mr. Byer, who is the manager of record, I think signed for the violation. So I don't know whether you interfaced with him, but was he present to your knowledge?
No,
Okay,
I never went inside the House of Blues. The interaction took place on the street at Van Ness and Ipswich.
okay. Thank you, sir. Just for the record, Madam Chair and Commissioners, Mr. Davies, although certainly was employed at the time in question, is no longer an employee of the House of Blues. But Mr. Byer and Mr. Resende, who were present that evening, can certainly testify. Thank you, Officer. May I inquire of the two witnesses? Thank you. Mr. Resende, first, were you first of all, you've been sworn, just state your name and your title at the licensee for the record.
Kevin Resende, Operations Manager at the House Blues.
Okay, and are you familiar with the incident that was just described by Officer Monahan?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and can you explain in your words what you discovered, what happened, and what you did in response?
Okay, so we received a radio call asking for security to come to one of our bars. So I responded along with a few other people, at which point I spoke to the victim and she explained that a man had come in and was just kicking in all the bathroom stall doors, in which case she said that she was struck in the head when he came to hers. So after talking to her, talked to a couple of our other security guards and tried to get a description of the man. And I walked with her for a few minutes to try to locate the gentleman in question, in which case we went to one of our stairwells and Jason Davies had already made contact with the gentleman. At this point, the woman asked if we were going to call the cops. I informed her that our primary goal was to get him out of the building first, in which case, as she followed us out, she called 911 on her own. From my recollection, she was trying to follow the gentleman up the street and Jason was, acting in a way like to maintain the peace, following them up the street. And at that point, I was told that I was able to go back inside the venue.
At this time, you pretty much right away knew that she had called the police.
Yeah, she was right next to me when she said that she was calling the police.
And is that why you didn't call the police yourself?
Yes.
Otherwise, would you have called the police?
In a situation like that, we probably would have called the police, yes.
And are you aware that the suspect was looking for his wife?
I didn't have direct contact with the suspect. That was Jason that was involved with that. I was primarily with the victim, trying to calm her down and keep her away from him to further provoke anything.
Okay. But you subsequently became aware that the Fish couple were husband and wife and Mr. Fish was looking for his wife?
Yes, afterwards I did find that
out. Thank you, sir. And the commissioners may have some questions. I did want to just ask Mr. Byer a couple of questions as well. So is that okay to go ahead with him first? Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Byer, where are you? You're here somewhere, you're sworn. There you are. Just state your name and your position at the licensee, please.
Nick Byer, General Manager, House of Blues.
Okay, and were you present on the night in question?
I was.
And were you responsible for the room that night as the manager of record?
I was.
And did you and your staff respond to an incident that we've just heard testified to by Officer Monahan?
They did.
Okay. Did you subsequently, now Mr. Davies, who was the security person that night, is no longer employed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Have you been able to follow up on this incident with regard to video of what occurred, or what at least we have video of?
We have, the video is very tough to see. We have the first interaction where Jason finds the suspected guy, of the guy that in question that went in the bathrooms, and pulls him into our house left stairwell to question him and make sure, find out what was going on. His primary responsibility is obviously to assess the situation and get rid of any threat that's in the building. I think this was kind of happening at the same time or right before Kevin's interaction with the female. And you see him getting pulled in question into the stairwell, but you don't see anything after that. So that's the video footage we have.
Okay, all right. And when you arrived on the scene, had the incident already occurred? He'd already left the bathroom?
Yeah, I didn't get to the scene. I was notified of it kind of after the police had already arrived and was debriefed. Our team's primary goal is to get the situation under control and things like that. So I came down after the fact.
Okay. And did you and your staff cooperate with the Boston Police Department?
Yes.
Can you describe for the board what security procedures you have with regard to bathrooms generally, men's rooms, women's rooms, handicap bathrooms? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, every night we have specific, we call them roamers, that their primary responsibility is roaming the floors and making consistent and frequent rounds in the restrooms to check on them, make sure there's nobody that's in need of medical attention, make sure everybody's okay, making sure there's no altercations or anything like that. So, every night we have staff assigned to that role.
Okay. And on the night in question, were staff so assigned?
Yes.
And subsequent to this incident, did you review procedures with your staff, especially with regard to bathroom safety?
Yes.
And is it your belief that you did everything possible and responsible on the night in question with regard to the woman who was injured?
Yeah, I think our team did a great job of assessing the situation, taking the complaint from the female that was in question that had gotten hit, identifying who the male was very quickly, obviously getting him out of the building and making sure there was no longer a threat inside the building like we do with every situation. And from what Jason had explained to me, when he got outside and we knew that the cops were being called, the female in question was also out there videotaping and following the guy to stay with him. So Jason had kind of made sure to walk with them to maintain the peace and make sure that there just weren't any issues until the cops arrived.
Okay, and then were you there when the police arrived?
It happened not at House of Blues, it happened down the street. So I was not on scene when the cops arrived.
But Jason was with this woman
Jason was
outside.
the one with them, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Byer. The commissioners may have some questions for you. Hold on.
Thank you, Attorney Quilty. Chairman Joyce, do you have any questions?
Sorry, I'm having a hard time getting off mute. Can you tell me how the bathrooms are normally manned on a weekend night or whatever night of the week this is?
Mr. Byer?
I mean, it's kind of like I just described. We don't have a physical person standing at each restroom in the venue. We have roamers that are constantly making rounds in the bathrooms.
Do they go
Do those
into the
rounds
bathroom?
specifically include the bathrooms?
Correct, yes.
And how many, for for the House of Blues, how many people do those rounds? Can you describe that? Like, how often do you think do they go into the bathroom?
Yeah, we'll have, I mean, depending on the night, how busy of a night it is. I think on this specific night, I mean, this was during COVID still, we only had like 700 people, guests in the building that night. But we'll generally have 2 to 3 roamers on the floor that are constantly making, well, on every level, making rounds in all the bathrooms and all the levels.
Okay.
So,
I might have a couple more questions, but I'll defer to Commissioner Kern and Commissioner Saxon if you have any questions right now.
Not at the moment, thank you.
I do. So Mrs. Fish was cut off at some point earlier in the evening, is that correct?
To tell you the truth, Commissioner, that's what the report suggests. I do not know. Mr. Byer, would you have any knowledge of that?
I don't have any direct knowledge of that.
That statement came from the police report, so I honestly don't know where the information came from. It appears also that they were in some kind of a party bus and had come in that and were leaving in that, but we don't have any direct knowledge about her being, cut off earlier in the night.
Okay, and were all the employees asked about her? Did anyone remember her at all? Because you got that allegation after the fact, and so I'm wondering if you tried to figure out what was going on with her before this happened.
Yeah, Nick, were we able to do any reconnaissance, if you will, about that statement in the police report?
I don't recall. Kevin, do you recall any? I mean, Kevin might recall a situation like that. I don't have any recollection of there being told or made aware of that.
Yeah.
I don't recall any incident involving the woman being cut off. I was primarily with the victim of what happened in the bathroom, so I'm not sure what happened earlier with that woman.
And Commissioner, I'd just say it looks as though from the report that most of the interaction with the licensee staff was with Mr. Fish and the victim and not with Mrs. Fish, if you will, I think.
Okay. Well, with regard to Mr. Fish, did you do any investigation regarding his search for his wife? Did the staff, anyone on the staff, know that he was searching and concerned for his wife prior to him entering the bathroom?
I wasn't directly involved with it, so obviously I'm just from what Jason, who was the main person involved dealing with Mr. Fish. I believe he made Jason aware that that's what he was doing when he pulled him aside to question him.
But that was after the fact.
That was after the fact, correct?
Yeah,
Commissioner does.
You have.
I'm sorry.
I'm asking about prior to Attorney.
No, I understand, but I think
I know you understand.
We don't have any info on the prior to, but subsequently we learned that this was a husband looking for his wife. But no, I don't believe he went to anybody prior to going into the bathroom to say, my wife's missing, help me find her. I don't think that happened.
Okay. The first thing I'm probably trying to get at is what inquiry was made to figure out what was going on with this couple prior to this happening. Like, I expect you to do an investigation. When allegations like this are made, I would think that you would inquire of your staff and you would come to us with those inquiries that staff told. We asked staff what happened and people said they had no interaction with the Fishes, or we did have interaction with the Fishes. Do we have any inquiry with regard to that?
Mr. Byer, can you?
No, I mean, the only interaction of the people with the suspect and his wife were Jason, who only dealt with Mr. Fish, to my knowledge. And then Kevin, who dealt with the woman in question.
Right. I mean, Commissioner, just saying fairness, it doesn't appear as though Mr. Fish went to anybody for help, but rather just went on his own looking for his wife, is what we think occurred here. And again, the only film that exists is Mr. Fish in the stairwell with Jason Davies. When Davies, got him out of the bathroom and questioned.
I mean, what I'm hearing is no one really looked into whether anyone had any interaction with the fishes before this happened.
Well, I mean, I think they did. I guess, apologies, but I think Mr. Davies is the direct involvement, and he is no longer employed. We're trying to answer as best we can here, but it's like, the tree in the forest here. If we didn't know about it, it'd be pretty hard to respond. We just think this person went off on his own, as you might imagine. If he was concerned about his safety of his wife, he went off on his own and didn't ask for help or didn't ask anybody on staff for help and went into the bathroom. We think that's precisely what happened.
I don't have anything else at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Joyce or Commissioner Saxon, any further questions?
No, thanks.
Okay. Board will take this. Yep, board will take this under advisement as well. Thank you. Calling item number 4, Lansdowne Boston Restaurant LLC, doing business as House of Blues, located at 15 to 41 Lansdowne Street. Date of the incident, January 11th, 2022. Assault and battery, patron in violation of Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 64, and Chapter 265, Section 13A. Who is present on behalf of the licensee?
Once again, Attorney Green, Dennis Quilty, attorney representing the licensee. With us again this morning, Nick Byer, the manager of record, Janelle Lewis of our security staff. And I don't know whether Stephanie Sullivan was with us. She had to leave, but she may still be on here. I'm not certain of that.
Someone named Steph is entering literally right now. I wonder if that is her actually.
That is her, I think. And I know she had a pre-existing appointment at 11 o'clock, so hopefully we can reach her before that occurs.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And who is
Sorry,
present?
sorry, I had a Zoom too. I'm here for a few minutes.
Great. Thank you for being with us. And is it possible to turn your camera on just so we can swear you in at the beginning?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Before we get to that, who is present on behalf of the Boston Police Department?
Sergeant Detective Donald Keenan.
Oh, and Officer Burgos.
And Sergeant Detective Keenan, same question. Is it possible to turn your camera on so we can swear you in?
How's that?
Perfect. And are there any other individuals with firsthand knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify this morning?
Myself, Randy Robbins.
Richard Frazier.
Thank you very much. Can you all please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Yes.
Thank you. Sergeant Detective, will you be reading the police report into the record?
I will.
You may proceed.
Reading from police incident report number 222-002-275 on about 10:20 p.m. on January 11th, 2022, Officer Burgos, while on a detail, took an assault and battery report at the House of Blues, Boston at 15 Lansdowne Street. Officer was approached by House of Blues staff security lead Janelle Lewis, who stated that there was an assault that took place within the establishment. Officer was then approached by victim Richard Frazier and Randy Robbins, who stated that they were assaulted by an unknown suspect. Victim Frazier stated that he was watching the show when his girlfriend, victim Robbins, accidentally hit a drink over, and the unknown male hit both of them in the face with a closed fist. Victim Frazier stated that the suspect was dark-skinned, bald, wearing a beanie cap, unknown color, and a cream-colored polo shirt. The officers observed both victims holding towels to their face and lacerations to the upper left cheek of victim Frazier, and a laceration to the upper right lip of victim Robbins. Both victims denied medical assistance, and the House of Blues staff gave both victims bandages and towels for their lacerations. Officer Burgos and myself approached the audience to look for the suspect to no avail. It should be noted that the victim Frazier pointed out several members of the crowd to the officers and was uncertain if it was the suspect. Shortly after, victim Frazier approached the officers and stated that he found the suspect in question Officers then accompanied the victim and approached Jeffrey Johnson. Johnson then spoke with Officer Burgos and stated that he did not know what the victim was talking about and that he never encountered both victims. It shall be noted that Johnson was wearing a navy blue beanie cap, navy blue jacket, and a white Tommy Hilfiger shirt underneath. Security lead Janelle Lewis stated both victims before they approached the officer multiple times that nobody assaulted them and they were now bleeding. Lewis also stated the female victim, Robbins, stated that she wanted to go into the crowd and her boyfriend said no. Then Robbins started to cry. I issued the license premise inspection number 026305 for the assault and battery patron on patron. That concludes the narrative of the report.
Thank you, Sergeant Detective. Attorney Quilty, would you like to address the alleged incident?
If I may question the Sergeant Detective,
Absolutely.
thank you very much. Sergeant, the inspection notice indicates that police were called by HOB staff. Is that correct?
Yeah, they notified us. We were right outside.
And your report goes on to suggest that they cooperated with the police.
Correct.
And did it appear there was a statement in here that appears to suggest that Janelle Lewis, who's on with us this morning, told you that these two individuals suggested to her that nobody had assaulted them. Is that correct?
That statement was made to Officer Burgos, apparently from Miss Janelle Lewis.
Okay. And you did go with the two, Mr. Frazier and Ms. Robbins, through the establishment trying to find the person they identified?
Yes, initially we went over to where they pointed out where the incident took place. And we weren't able to identify a suspect there.
And the one individual that Mr. Frazier pointed out did not fit the description?
Correct. He didn't fit the exact description, correct.
And that person denied to you that he had any involvement with these individuals?
That's correct.
And you never observed these two individuals get struck or observe anything that happened to them, did you?
I didn't observe the incident take place. I observed their injuries. Yes, they were bleeding when I was speaking with them. Both of them had cuts on their faces.
And they both denied medical assistance. And your report indicates that the House of Blues staff provided them with bandages and towels for these lacerations.
Yeah, they were being assisted by House of Blues staff. They just didn't want EMS called to the scene.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, Detective Sergeant. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
May I inquire of Ms. Sullivan while we have her with us? Thank you. Steph, you've been sworn in. Just state your full name and your title with the establishment, please.
Yes, Stephanie Sullivan, music hall supervisor.
Okay. Were you present on the night in question?
I was.
And did you interface with these two individuals, Ms. Robbins and Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Okay. And can you explain, did they suggest to you upon being questioned that nobody struck them?
Several times, yes.
Several times.
Mhm.
And could you see that they had lacerations?
Yes, the female had a laceration on her upper lip. The male had a pretty bad laceration on his cheek. I can't remember if it was the right or left, but on his cheek.
So notwithstanding that, they continued to tell you that nobody struck them, is that right?
Correct.
And how had your attention been drawn to them in the first place?
Yeah, so Janelle was dealing with the situation at first. I happened to be passing through the lobby, which is where they were at that time, when Janelle told me that she needed some help. She had to run to a different call, but there was a female in the women's bathroom, hysterical and had a laceration and was bleeding and just needed my help calming her down while she went to go deal with something else. So I was in there with her. I asked like what happened. She had said her and her boyfriend were just watching the show when they just started bleeding and didn't know what had happened to them. I asked if someone hurt them, and they said no.
So you attempted to inquire what happened and attempted to determine who had done this to try to be helpful?
They didn't say someone hit them at all, so I didn't ask who did it because they said no one had done it.
So they didn't give you a description?
No.
Did they subsequently give Ms. Lewis a description? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Okay. And your staff called the police, is that correct?
I think Janelle would be able to speak on that. I did not, but I believe Janelle was the one that called them over at least. They were on site.
All right. And then did you personally cooperate with the police in this regard?
I didn't really have much interaction with them, but yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. The board may have some questions for you. Let me just quickly, if I may, inquire of Ms. Lewis, if she's still with us.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
There you are. So Janelle, again, the same thing. You've been sworn. Just state your full name and your title, please.
Janelle Lewis. At the time of the incident, I was a security lead.
Okay. And were you present on the night in question?
I was.
And did you interface with Mr. Frazier and Ms. Robbins?
I did.
Okay. And what can you tell the board as to what you observed and what you did with regard to these two individuals?
I originally found them at our house right artist entry to the right side of the stage. They were on chairs. Our third party security supervisor had been attending to them and he gave them rags. As I walked up, Mr. Frazier was very loudly exclaiming how he couldn't believe that they were having a great time and nothing happened to them and now they're bleeding. So to confirm that, I asked him, nobody hit you, nothing happened to you? And he said, yeah, to my knowledge, nobody hit me, nobody hit her, and now we're both bleeding. Miss Robbins was crying hysterically, so I brought her to the lobby to use the restroom so she could clean the blood off of herself and I could maybe get her side of the story. When I got her to stop crying, I asked her what was the last thing she remembered before she realized she was bleeding. She said that her and her boyfriend were off to the side watching the show, and she asked to go into the pit and he said no. And then she just started crying again before she could finish telling me what happened. I did leave Steph with her so I could attend to another call, but as I came back through the lobby, I would check on them. When I came back, her boyfriend had joined her and he was signing the refusal forms, the medical refusal forms for them. I had left another staff member with them. And when I came back a third time, I believe, I saw the couple being escorted inside with an officer. And I asked my staff what happened. And she said they remembered who hit them and they immediately asked for an officer. But I confirmed with the original third-party manager that I received them from if they had said anything about being hit. And he told me no several times. They both said nobody hit them. Nothing happened to them. All of a sudden, they're just bleeding.
But then subsequently, they suggested to the police that somebody did hit them. And do you know whether they gave a description of that person?
Not to me, no.
Did you observe whether or not they went with the police officers through the establishment to look for someone?
I did watch them go inside with the officer to get someone. And then I watched the officer come back without the couple, but with the suspect that they had pointed out.
And then did the officer question that person? Did you observe that?
He did, and he looked visibly confused.
The person the officer was talking to?
Yes.
Any very unusual circumstances, did you discover anything further as the incident resolved or as these individuals left?
No, I was encouraging Mr. Frazier multiple times to go to the hospital as we were close to several hospitals. I was telling him that he probably needed stitches to his laceration. He said multiple times he was fine, and he was even like poking at it with his tongue and like flipping his lip over to show it to me. He was acting a little bit erratically, but I did maintain that I think he should go clean himself up and probably go to a hospital.
Do you, in your opinion, did you and the staff do everything possible to assist these individuals on that in question?
In my opinion, yes.
And
We
you're,
provided them, sorry, I was just gonna say, we gave them multiple items out of our first aid kit, including like alcohol wipes and antiseptic wipes and multiple sized bandages and gauze as well, so that they could try to patch themselves up since they refused medical attention. And I don't believe we had an EMT on site that night.
okay, and do you, the police, the inspection notice indicates that HOB staff called the police. Was that you?
No, it wasn't.
Do you know which staff member it was?
Her name is Charlie Peace.
Okay. So you know that call was made by your staff?
Yes, we have a police detail on site, so she just went out front to get them.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ms. Lewis. The members may have, the commissioners may have some questions for you. Is Mr. Byer still with us? Yes, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Mr. Byer, you're the manager of record. Were you on duty that night as well?
I was.
And can you add anything to what your staff has told us here this morning?
No, again, Steph and Janelle had the direct interaction with the couple, and they kind of debriefed me on what was going on, and that it was a very unusual circumstance, and kind of how Steph and Janelle had explained that they had originally said that nobody had hit them or anything like that, but that they eventually remembered and recalled and got the police involved to walk through and try and find the suspect.
So do you believe that after numerous questions about had somebody struck them and they said no, then finally they remembered? Is that what you're saying?
That's what it sounds like. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. For all three individuals, the commissioners may have some questions of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we turn to questions from the board, I see we are joined by Ms. Robbins and Mr. Frazier. Thank you for being with us this morning. Is there any thing you would like to add about the incident before we turn to questions from the board?
Yes, if I may. So,
Yeah, of course.
okay, so my internet's a little spotty, so just sorry about that. But I would like to say that Richard did give a description. I believe that Donald Keenan mentioned the description in the beginning of this testament, that it was a bald man, darker skin, and a beanie cap. I know that the suspect we mentioned, he didn't fit that exact description. However, he was wearing a beanie, and if you looked at his knuckles, you could see that there were lacerations on the knuckles from hitting us. And that was my first altercation of ever really getting punched in the face. So I believe that's, and from drinking earlier that night too, I believe that's why I was just in shock and couldn't really give a definite answer. And that's why after, like Janelle said,
Right,
and Stephanie said,
it took us a minute
hysterical
to remember
crying.
like what even happened.
I believe after I processed what happened, I got rid of the hysterical crying. Then I remembered what happened, why I was bleeding, what, all of that. But I have the clothes that I was wearing from that night. I have pictures. We definitely didn't do this to ourselves.
Madam Chair, may I just inquire briefly?
From the
Mr.
victim?
Green? Yes.
Sure.
So, Ms. Robbins, you suggested that you observed the person's knuckles bleeding,
Yes.
but it doesn't appear that you said anything to the police about that, because it certainly would have appeared in their report.
We didn't mention that, no, but when we saw the suspect, the one that Richard brought over, we saw his knuckles. We just didn't figure to mention that to the police
We
officer.
assumed that because I figured out who it was, that it would be just moved forward with, because it was a complete positive ID on the person. Like, I knew for a fact it was him. He was there with his girlfriend. We were standing around each other for about 20 to 30 minutes before the altercation happened. It was over a spilled drink, and he ended up dumping his drink on Mrs. Robbins' head. And so I got between them, and I was going to offer to buy him a drink because he was, you know, acting, he was swearing, like verbally assaulting her, basically saying he was going to assault her. I got between them, and he sucker punched me and then hit her after dumping the drink.
So did you, none of this appears in the police report. Why did you not?
Attorney
Tell
Quilty,
all this to the
we're gonna
police.
let them tell their side of the story, okay?
A lot of our story wasn't accounted for. We were in shock when we were dealing with everyone, and we were like, we don't remember what happened. That was like the first minute after we had gone, the bartender had given us rags so I would stop the bleeding. And then when we went to security, we hadn't recalled what had just happened. And then, yeah, we just kind of snapped into it like, oh, right, it was the guy that we were just standing with.
And after the
And
after the show, we did go to the Everett Hospital. We have documentation from attending.
Yeah.
We just didn't want to do it right in the middle of the show because I know it's awful to say, but we were really looking forward to the show. So we just wanted to stay for as much as possible. We went afterwards.
Thank you both. I'm going to turn it over to the board at this point for any questions, starting with Chairwoman Joyce.
Okay, maybe it's Janelle or Stephanie, I'm not sure, but someone from management, when you observed Ms. Robbins and Mr. Frazier with lacerations on them and bleeding, and you asked them what happened and they said they couldn't remember, what did you do afterwards to confirm what to assist figuring out what happened when you had two patrons that were bleeding?
I can answer this. But I do want to say it wasn't that they said they didn't remember, is that they explicitly said no one hit them. Nothing had happened to them.
What were you
so
thinking?
I mean, it was like they said, they didn't do it to themselves. I don't think they were both bleeding profusely. It was very clear that something happened. When I first got up to them, Mr. Frazier was speaking more. So that's kind of why I got Miss Robbins on her own to try to calm her down and kind of get her side. That tends to work a little bit better when we kind of get the women alone and kind of try to relate to them. But before I could really get any further information from her, she was crying too much. And then Mr. Frazier had joined us again.
Okay, so I'm just gonna, maybe I'll rephrase it. You had a victim that was crying and two victims that were bleeding profusely. As part of the security lead and management team, what did you do to figure out what happened here?
I tried to ask as many questions as I could to give me any sort of idea about what had happened, but they weren't very forthcoming with any information.
Okay, so just to make it clear in my head, then the police arrived and they identified someone. Did you pull security camera and look for that person? It was a very detailed description. So that maybe perhaps it would show the person who caused the bleeding, the profusely bleeding.
So that description was never given to our security staff. They said that they had remembered who did it and immediately asked for police. And the security staff in question got the police. So that description was given only to the police officer. I personally don't have access to the cameras.
So tell me, someone from House of Blues staff, tell me what your internal procedures are when there are two people, and I'm going to use Ms. Lewis's description. One was crying and two were bleeding profusely. The police were called. What is your internal security operate? What do you internally do to investigate this? You just hand it over to the police and move on with the night, or what do you do? Do you review video? Do you write a report?
So
what are your policies and procedures?
Yeah. So once we got the police involved and they had started to, police started asking questions, they had remembered the suspect. We ended up trying to look at footage. We don't have good camera footage of the location that this incident allegedly occurred. So there was we had no footage that showed anything. It's very difficult to see when you have hundreds of people on the floor and the camera angles we have just did not hit that area. So we did attempt to look for that footage once we had gotten a description from the police.
So you did get a description of the alleged assailant?
Just after the fact, from what I've been told, just from the police report.
Okay, I'm confused. So when did you start to look at the footage? Our security had looked at the footage that had tried to find footage that night. We couldn't. I went on later on the next week and had tried to look for footage and I couldn't find any. So that night, security looked for footage of the victims being assaulted.
I was told that that was the case, yes.
Is there anyone from the House of Blues team that can confirm that?
Confirm, what's the question? Confirm whether
My
video was
question
available?
is, Nick Byer is telling me that he later on went and used the description given to him to see if he could find it on the cameras. And I asked him, when did he get that description? Because Miss Lewis said she didn't know that night. It was only given to police. He said he looked about a week later, but security looked that night. So what did security look for that night, and what did they find in the video footage? Is there anyone from security that can talk about? Walk me through. So you have two victims. They're bleeding profusely. They go out to the police come in, they're able to identify the victim, but no one on the team knows who the victim is. I'm just so
What do you mean
confused.
identify the victim? But the victim was right there. They talked to the
I'm
victim.
sorry, the person who caused the bleeding. I'm just very confused. It seems like some
Well,
people on
Madam
the
Chair,
team knew who did it, some people didn't.
Can I try to answer your question? If you read
Yes,
the police report, it's pretty obvious.
I read it.
Police-
I'm asking the people that were there that night who said they did not
But
hear
the
about the victim.
description you're asking about was given by these two individuals to the police officer. That's the only description that was given. They told our staff nothing happened.
Okay, so I'm asking where the breakdown was with your security staff. How come, did they
there
see
wasn't.
anything on the camera that they reviewed that night of an assault happening with people profusely bleeding? Nothing
They
was seen?
interfaced with them immediately. These two individuals interfaced with those people immediately and were
So when
told
did they look-
repeatedly that
when did
nothing
they
happened.
look- Okay, and so when the police came, the police didn't talk to security and say, I'm looking for someone with a beanie?
Yes, they did. But they also reported that they pointed out numerous people in the audience and were uncertain if it was the suspect. I mean, these people were just not cooperative, even when the police came. And the person identified, the police responded, spoke to the individual, he denied it, no further action was taken. I think you draw from that the conclusion that that person wasn't whoever it was that struck these people. Otherwise, the police would have noted that and taken some steps. It appears that they couldn't identify anybody. They gave multiple descriptions, and the one that they stopped denied it, and no further action was taken. I don't know what our staff could do. Once the police are involved, our responsibility is to stand back and let the police do their jobs, which they did. They called the police were on duty. These people brought them to the police. These people helped them. They gave them bandages. They offered them help.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, we can't, if people deny help and deny what happened, we can't just say, hey, you're lying. Something happened.
And then I'm confused. Were they allowed, it sounds like they didn't go to the hospital till several hours later. Were they allowed to stay and listen to the concert? It just,
I honestly don't know. They told us today that they went to the hospital in Everett the next day. I don't know.
We went
We have no
later that
report.
night. We did stay for the concert, yes.
Okay.
They moved us to the balcony upstairs instead of the floor downstairs. They wanted us separated.
Okay.
That answers that question.
So you decided to stay after you were assaulted?
Yes, we did.
So security brought us to the second floor so that we weren't with the man that had assaulted us.
Okay. Is that,
Like I said,
anyone?
it's sort of silly. We wanted to stay because we were looking forward to the show for so long, even though what happened, but at least we were separated and we didn't see that person again.
Okay, so you were assaulted, you went to management of security and said, I don't know what happened. Then the police came, you said you didn't know what happened, but you chose to stay and watch the show from a balcony.
Yeah, so then we went to the hospital later that night, immediately after the concert. Ricky got stitches. I still have a cut in my nose.
Okay, all right.
We have the bills, if that matters.
No, it doesn't, thank you.
Okay.
I don't have any further questions. Commissioner Curran or Commissioner Saxon?
I guess for our purposes, our limited purposes here, the thing that I want to know from either Mr. Frazier or Ms. Robbins is what you said you were there for 20, 30 minutes with this person near you before it happened.
Yes.
Did anything happen before it happened?
As soon as we got there, his girlfriend and him, they turned around. We were standing behind them and they said, you can't stand there. You got to move. and we were behind them. We couldn't even really see the show. So as soon as we got
Right.
there, it was up in the air with them. So we moved around. I think if Ricky probably remembers a little better, we ended up going near the pit, and that's when the drink was spilled, and that's when really all hell broke loose. But as soon as we got there, we stood a little bit behind them, and the girlfriend opened her mouth and was saying, like, you guys got to move, blah, blah, blah.
But that was kind of a close interaction, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, physical, yeah.
Were the two, so now it's like two people, him and his girlfriend. Were they making a spectacle of themselves, like that someone should have intervened on them?
At that moment, I didn't think so. I didn't really think anything of it. I thought maybe because of COVID that they haven't gone to a concert in a while and they just wanted to be right front and center, but I didn't know.
So this was front and center, like they were up against the front, or?
No. Not front and center,
From
but they were
from
really,
the
they were
bar,
close.
there was a banister between the pit area and the like
The bar
standing area by the bar.
sides and it's raised, correct?
Yes.
So you were on one of the raised sides above the
Yeah.
main.
But when the altercation started, we were on the floor and he was still on the raised area. Like we were on separate parts of the floor.
The drink in question came forward on you moved backwards and bumped it.
It was on the banister, yeah, and it got bumped, and then he picked the rest of it up and dumped it on her.
But prior to that, there was nothing that would have been obvious to staff or anything, or even to you that he was gonna assault you.
No.
If anything, it was just the girl. She was just being a little rude, but she had nothing to do with the assault. It was just what you're
Right.
saying prior to that. If anything happened, it was just the way that she spoke to us about moving from where we were standing.
And I never identified multiple people. He was the one person, and I found him because he was with his girlfriend, and I told the police that I knew it was him and his girlfriend.
Of course, the suspect's going to say it wasn't him and seem all confused.
Right.
And so after the police had the interaction with the person that you had positively identified, did they come back to you and tell you?
We were standing face to face, and he told me, "I don't know you. I don't remember you." And I was like, "Yes, you do. You just punched me in the face."
That's
like
when,
I was just kind of in shock that he was denying it when.
That's
I
when
was
we
looking
should have
him
said,
dead in
"Look
the
at the
face.
knuckles." That's when we should have said, "Just look at
I
his
know he was
hand."
pointing in my face. He was pointing in my face, like, "I don't know you," and his hands were bloody.
And
I just kind of assumed that everyone knew what was going on, like he was just kind of being belligerent, but he was actually denying it.
After the denial and interaction ended, did you have further interaction with the police, or did you all separate right at that moment?
No, after that moment,
They
we just went to security, and security moved us to the second floor. There was no real more altercation with the police, no.
Right. They just told us they had his name and they would move forward with it if we wanted to open a case.
So then we gave them our number and all that.
And Miss Lewis, is it?
Hi, yes.
Okay, if I recall, you said you witnessed the interaction with the man that Mr. Frazier and Ms. Robbins had identified, and that actually had a conversation with the police. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, is it the way it reads in the police report is that interaction happened, and then after the fact, you basically, it seems that you went to the police and said, hey, if they're telling you someone hit them prior to, they were saying nobody hit them. Is that what happened?
Yes.
Okay, so you saw that interaction, and you, in response to seeing that, decided to tell the police that, hey, this is what happened before.
As I said, I came back and they were not with the staff that I left them with. Anytime there's an incident like this, we kind of like to keep eyes on the people we're dealing with. And when I asked her where they went, she said they were inside with the officer. And I kind of watched them bring the officer inside. And then I watched the officer come back without them, but with the suspect and his girlfriend. And I saw him speak to them for a little bit. So I went to the officer, and I didn't really ask any questions, but I did say that they swore multiple times up and down that nobody had hit them, and they don't know how they started bleeding.
Madam Chair, may I add one thing? It's very unfortunate what happened to these individuals. I'd submit to the board that if they were as forthcoming to our staff on the night of the incident as they have been in the last 20 minutes, this would have been addressed immediately and dealt with. I think our staff did everything humanly possible. They called the police, they interfaced with these two people. They were told point blank multiple times, nothing happened. Very, very difficult for our people to be more helpful when they're basically being misled because these people wanted to stay and watch the show. And even after the fact, they bring them upstairs to a separate area so they could stay and watch the show. Again, I just submit to you that if we had all this information that you've been given this morning on the night in question, it would have been a lot easier to make resolution here that would satisfy everybody, but we can't perform miracles.
Thank you.
Even without having all of the facts that you have now, can you look back on the incident and point out where you could have improved? And also, I'll also ask a second question. What have you done since then? Like maybe with the cameras. I mean, there's an obvious hole with the camera system. Have you improved that?
I can speak a little bit to that. At the time of this incident, we didn't have a camera room attendant or camera person. We've since posted that position, and we'll have a camera person on for every show that can watch our cameras when incidents happen. They can keep a record, keep a log of the situations, and making sure that we have really good detailed information on any incident that occurs in our venue. But that person's main responsibility will be to sit in the camera room on a show night and watch. When an incident happens, they can pull up the location immediately and try to start to investigate it and make sure we have really good information for any sort of follow-up.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Chairman.
No questions.
Great. Any further questions from the board at this time?
No, thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all. The board will take this under advisement. Thank you, everybody, for testifying this morning. Calling item number 5 on this morning's agenda, the K's Inc. doing business as Sissy K's, located at 6 Commercial Street. Date of the incident, February 6, 2022, drug use on premise in violation of Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 64. Who is present on behalf of the licensee?
William Johnson.
Good morning, everyone. Andrew Upton for the licensee.
Thank you. And who is present on behalf of the Boston Police Department?
Sergeant Detective Gallagher.
Thank you. And are there any other individuals with firsthand knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify this morning?
Detective Hernandez if needed.
Thank you. Can you all please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Sergeant Detective Gallagher, you may proceed with the police report.
Yes, good morning. I'll first be reading from a Cambridge police report that was written on February 6th. On 2/6/2022 at approximately 11:13 p.m., Cambridge Police and Fire responded to Layton Street residents for a report of possible overdose. On 2/6/22 at approximately 11:30 p.m., Officer Mose, while assigned to the 1R along with Sergeant McCarthy, car 17, responded to 1 Layton Street, apartment 1009 for the report of a possible overdose. Upon arrival, Cambridge Fire and Pro EMS was speaking with the victim, later identified as Erica Kinsberg, date of birth 6/12/98. Erica was vomiting and stated she believed that someone might have put something in her drink. Erica also states that she takes medication Zoloft as prescribed. I spoke with Erica's friend, Dom Pisano, date of birth 7/14/96, who stated that Erica had a few drinks tonight prior to going to Sissy K's bar, Boston's Faneuil Hall. Dom stated that Erica had a few more drinks at the bar, then decided to go with her friends to an apartment on Layton Street at approximately 10:30 p.m. Dom stated that while they were in the Uber, Vehicle, Erica vomited inside and believes Erica just had too much to drink. Dom stated that when they got to her apartment, Erica stated she was not feeling good and felt numb. Dom stated he was not drinking that night. Pro EMS ambulance transported Erica to Mass General Hospital. We were involved after that. My report reads on 2/11/2022, Sergeant Detective William Gallagher of the Licensed Premise Unit followed up on a Cambridge Police Report number 2200800-1 written on 2/6/11:13 p.m. And that police report, Cambridge Police and Fire responded to Layton Street, Cambridge, Mass. The report of an overdose. Responding officers spoke to the white non-Hispanic female victim, 23 years old, who was vomiting and believed that someone put something in a drink. Victim did state that she also takes prescription medicine, Zoloft. Officers then spoke to witness friend of victim, who reported that she consumed several alcoholic drinks before going to Sissy K's at 4-6 Commercial Street. Witnesses also reported that the victim consumed a few more drinks at Sissy K's. Witness stated that they left Sissy K's, took an Uber back to the friend's apartment. Witness stated that the victim started vomiting. Witness stated that believed the victim may have consumed too much alcohol. Witness also stated that he was not drinking. Victim was then transported to Mass General Hospital for treatment. On 2/11 at about 8:30 p.m., Sergeant Gallagher spoke to the witness, who reported the victim tested positive for roofies in her system. The incident will be further investigated by BPD Licensed Premise Unit and forwarded to BPD Station A1. Myself and Detective Hernandez responded on the 15th and conducted licensed premise inspection of Sissy K's at 4-6 Commercial Street. This inspection came about because the incident took place on 2/6. Detectives spoke to the manager, Tom Woodward, and requested him to save any and all video from the evening 2/6/22. Detectives informed Mr. Woodward that they would gather more information from the victim and witnesses with the hopes of identifying the suspect. As a result of this incident, we issued a licensed premise inspection notice number 061300 Sissy K's for drug use on premise. Patron claimed that they were roofied. So Tom Woodward signed it and accepted the notice. Those essentially are the facts that we have.
Thank you, Sergeant Detective. Attorney Upton, would you like to address the alleged incident?
Yes, thank you. First, a question or two for the detective. Detective, were the staff and management of Sissy K's cooperative?
Yes, sir, they
Can you
were.
talk to them? Okay. At one point, you referenced from the report, a man named Dom said she had too much to drink.
That was his impression, sir, that he thought that was the first thing that he thought, that she had too much to drink.
All right, so it says that she had several drinks before she went to Sissy K's and several drinks at Sissy K's. I mean, to me, we usually say two is a couple, three or more is several. I mean, did you get any indication? Did she have 6 or 7 drinks?
We don't have an exact number, sir. The report is as it is, that she had a couple before and a couple there. And Dom, that was his first impression, that he thought she had too much to drink, of course, until the drug toxology results came back with roofies.
Right, and when you say a witness said she had roofies in her system, is that Dom, is that the same witness?
Yes.
Did you ever see a toxicology report?
No, sir, we do not. We just took their word.
All right. Did he ever reference any specifics about a toxicology report?
He said that she had went to the hospital and the results came back positive for roofies.
All right. Thank you. No more questions for the detective. I'd just like to make a few more points. Number one, Mr. Johnson will testify if necessary, but I will state that there's been a comprehensive review of the video of that night. And it appears that during the time that the victim was there were 9 people in the bar, 4 of whom were staff. So we have reviewed the video. There appears to be no suspicious activity going on. They took a hard look at all this. The video is available for us to produce to the board if you like, but it does not appear that it was a crowded club-like situation where it would be easy for someone to sneak a drug into a drink. I've also submitted to the board some articles from medical journals which indicate that people who take sertraline, which is the generic name for Zoloft, which the victim said she was taking, can have false positives for benzodiazepines of up to 26%. So there is a possible drug interaction factor that the board may want to consider. We've already discussed that this person had 6 or more drinks and was vomiting. We can also tell you that Sissy Case has a history of cooperation with the board and with the BPD. In fact, in recent months, due to the incidents that have been ongoing in the Faneuil Hall area, the BPD captain for that area has asked Sissy Case to mount BPD cameras on the outside of their building, which they have done and routinely share with the Boston Police. With that, I'd like to have Bill Johnson make a brief statement.
Good morning. I'm Bill Johnson. I represent Sissy K's. I've been working there for about 30 years now. We employ a training company, nightclub security consultants, that train our entire staff. Managers that work for us take a more extensive program that involves about 10 hours of training and testing. All the bartenders and security staff take new employee security training. That includes a 1-hour training on club drug prevention, which also includes sexual assault prevention, training on dealing with sexual assault in those situations. We have over 20 staff trained that are on staff currently, and I think our attorney submitted some certificate programs today. We also have extensive video coverage that we routinely share with the Boston Police. Video from that night shows barely anyone in the crowd. I watched the entire 3-hour period from 7:30 to 10:30, and I saw one table with 4 people, a couple patrons at the bar, and there was 2 waitresses, a manager, and a bartender all working. So, I mean, to get that by 4 employees in a very, very small room at Sissy K's, if anyone's familiar, it's only about 900 square feet. So it's really no hidden areas. It's wide open. I didn't see anything at all. I would also like to say that we're aware of a lot of the issues that are going on due to the Boston Police announcements with Rufinol. Along with the board, I know that back in November, there was a statement put out on both. So we've made them clear to our entire staff. You know, the lawyer that works for us has to ask tough questions, but at the same time, I have to do my job, and my job is to be aware of the risk to patrons, particularly female patrons. I work with the security staff all the time to make sure that no one's being put at risk. We coordinate with the Boston Police, and we share our footage with the police whenever it's requested, and we work with them to have an orderly closing every night. And having those video cameras outside our building every night also gives us the ability to catch somebody that's not acting properly. Since the incident, I did take some notes here. I want to look at them just to, go over everything. Since that incident, we've posted notices in the bathrooms, public restrooms. We've actually copied the official notices that Boston Police put out. And we've, again, made our staff completely aware of what's going on downtown. Sergeant Gallagher told us that it's been going on quite a bit in some of the bars. So we shared that with everyone and told them to be diligent. We have some procedures in place where we can constantly tell staff, tell patrons to be aware of the situation. If they're leaving their drink open or they want to go to the bathroom, they leave it on a table. Staff is trained to tell them to take it with them. We also, since COVID began, we started using to-go cups that have covers on them. So now we keep them handy at the bar for anyone that wants them. We put a plastic cover on all the cups at nighttime if they want them. During the daytime, we use glass for lunch and dinner. But if somebody requests a cover, we transport it into a 16-ounce or a 10-ounce plastic cup and put the cover on it that has a straw opening at the top. That has been requested quite a bit recently, and it works. That's about all we've done since the incident, and we're staying diligent.
Bill, do you want to tell them that if someone ignores the suggestion of staff to cover the drinks, does staff sometimes put a coaster right over them?
Yeah, they will. The staff knows to just put a coaster over someone's drink. You know, if they get upset or they're like, "Hey, who put this coaster on my drink?" We just get them a fresh drink. It's not, you know, we just don't want that incident to happen. So sometimes, you know, customers think they got everything in hand, but the staff's trained to just put a coaster right over the drink.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Joyce, do you have any questions?
Thank you for that additional information. I have no questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Curran and Commissioner Saxon.
I do not, thank you.
Commissioner Curran, any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. The board will take this matter under advisement.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Calling item number 6, the Boston Leco Corp. doing business as Legacy Boston, located at 71 to 79 Warrington Street, dated the incident February 11th, 2022. Failure to notify police and EMS of drugged patron on premise in violation of Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 64, and Board's Rule 1.14b. Who is present on behalf of the licensee?
Charles Del Patio. Terrence Gathers.
Sorry, you broke up a little bit there. What was your name?
Just the two of us. Terrence Gathers. Terrence Gathers.
Thank you.
Did not hear me.
And who is present on behalf of the Boston Police Department?
Sergeant Detective William Gallagher.
Thank you. Are there any other individuals with firsthand knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify this morning?
Detective Hernandez if needed.
Thank you. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Sergeant, you may proceed with the police report.
Yes, good morning. Again, I'll be reading from a Cambridge police report on 2/12/2022. Cambridge police responded to an unconscious party in the area of Beach Street. On 2/11/2022, Officer Mias was working the uniform patrol route as the 10R on the last half, 2,300 hours to 700 hours. On the date of 2/12/22, at approximately 1:46 hours, myself, Sergeant Gallagher, who is no relation, and Officer Simas responded to 93 Bank Street with the report of an unconscious female. Cambridge Fire and Harvard PD also were with us. Upon arrival, we were told by the Harvard staff that the medical emergency was taking place in the Mathers House dorm in a building called the Tower Room 60-64. In this room, we located Carly Roy, date of birth 4/26/2000, female suffering a medical emergency. Roy had slurred her speech and was not able to walk on her own and had trouble staying alert. Marie Ann Harrigan, date of birth 1/12/2001 in Parker, Mass, date of birth 4/12/2000, identified themselves as roommates and occupants of this dorm room. Mass stated that Roy came over that night around 7 p.m. They each had about one drink before going out. Himself, Roy, and Harrigan, and two other friends identified as Jacob Blair and Kelly Nicholson, then departed to a club called Legacy. Legacy is located at 79 Warrington Street, Boston. This occurred around 10:45 p.m. Mass stated that they each had about one alcoholic drink at the club. Around midnight, Roy started exhibiting slurred speech, trouble walking, and difficulty staying alert. Mass stated that it was a very sudden change in behavior, as Roy had been fine before. Club security then escorted them and stated to them that this had happened before several times over the course of the night with other patrons. Mass stated that one of the security staff named Terrence gave his number and asked Mass to contact him and how the situation develops. Terrence's number is also on the police report. At about 12:30 a.m., the group got an Uber and returned to their dorm room in Cambridge. Ra's condition had gotten worse and thus prompted Harrigan to call 911. Additionally, Jacob Blair, Kaylee Nicholson, and also began feeling ill. Both parties had sipped some of Ra's drink at the club. Blair and Nicholson were not present at Mather's house dorm upon police arrival. Herrick did state that he spoke with both parties, and though they felt a bit sick, they did not want medical response, and they were being looked at by friends. Ra was transported to transported by MIT EMS to Mount Auburn Hospital. There I spoke with Dr. Christopher Fisher and explained the situation and requested a toxology report, to which he agreed. I did come in contact with the victim then, and the victim reported to me that the toxology results were inconclusive. They did not test, I was told, for benzos. They treated it as a self-inflicted, if you will, incident. Then myself and Detective Hernandez responded to Club Legacy. On 2/12, my report leads at 23:05 hours. Sergeant Gallagher, licensed premise unit, received a call from Cambridge Police Report, number 222-000-951, data from the incident that took place on the 11th. During the incident, Cambridge Police responded for an unconscious party at Beach Street. Officers responded to 93 Banks along with Cambridge Fire and University Police. Officers were directed to Harvard staff to where they located the 20-year-old victim and 2 witnesses. Officers observed the victim to be slurred speech, unable to walk, and unable to stay alert. Witnesses stated they had 1 drink before heading out to Legacy nightclub that evening. Witnesses stated they all had about 1 drink at the club, then observed the victim was slurred speech and having trouble walking. Witnesses stated they were escorted out of the club after informing staff of the incident. Witnesses stated that the victim's condition worsened and they were called 911 about 12:30 a.m. The victim was transported to Mount Auburn Hospital where toxology was requested. Boston Police Licensed Premise Unit will follow up with the victim witness Club Legacy. Copy of this report will also be forwarded to BPD station as well. Myself and Detective Hernandez did conduct a licensed premise inspection on the 16th. Inspection came about because of the incident from the 11th. Victim and her friends reported to staff, spoke to staff at Legacy about the incident and were informed that this had happened before. The victim was transported to the hospital and after leaving Legacy and after going back to her dorm. Victim reports that the hospital failed to test her for date rape drugs, in her own word. On the evening of the 17th, detectives spoke with Terrence Gathers, manager. He said he remembers the incident. Mr. Gathers stated that a video system at the Legacy focuses on employees and not really on the patrons. Mr. Gathers stated he would speak to all his employees about the incident and about being more vigilant. As a result of this incident, Sergeant Gallagher issued a licensed premise inspection notice number 060944 to Legacy for failure to call BPD EMS for drug patron on premise. Mr. Terrence Gathers signed for and accepted the notice. So essentially 3 reports. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Del Pidio, Mr. Gathers, would you like to address the alleged incident?
Yes, please.
Oh, Mr. Del Pidio, your audio was breaking up. You've already been sworn in. Would you mind turning your camera off to see if that helps?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Can't see what you can do.
Let's see if that helps.
Is that any better?
Much better.
We just shut the camera off. Is that any better?
Much better.
Okay. On this particular night, we only had a half a club going that night because it was a slow night. And as far as the cameras, videos, we have cameras on the bars for anti-theft. So we don't have any other cameras inside in the club itself. Sergeant Gallagher, may I ask you a question, please, sir?
Yes, sir.
Sergeant Gallagher, you stated that the Rufinol test showed no indication whatsoever.
Actually, sir, her report states that they did not test for that.
Okay, but there was no drugs or anything found in their systems or anything to your knowledge, sir?
to my knowledge, no. Like, as I stated, she asked, this is after the fact. She was not cognizant when she went to the hospital what was going on. She was informed the next day that they had not tested her for any of these so-called date rape drugs.
Okay. We have a new policy in our club where if somebody puts a drink down and they walk away from that drink, we take their drink. And when they, unfortunately, there's problems going on everywhere in our city with these kinds of problems with the drugs. Also, I know when Terrence was up at the front door waiting, that someone would possibly need some assistance. So Mr. Gathers was at the front door waiting. And when he get up there, he spoke with them. And I'm going to let Mr. Gathers talk right now.
Good morning. So on the night in question, as Mr. Del Patio said, we got a 401 call. I was up at the front door. When I saw the reason for that call is so we can open up the door, make sure it's a clear exit out, and we can assist in any way possible. As they're coming upstairs, I noticed people coming up. Her friends were completely surrounding one girl. We had a car parked off to the right, so they were trying to get into the Uber, and I stopped and I said, hold on a second. I was like, what's going on? And I started asking questions. At that point, I asked them, can I get you, let me call an ambulance for you, and everything else, as I'm speaking to her friend. She said, no, I want to go home. I want to go home, meaning the girl. Her friends put her inside the Uber. I started speaking to her other friend, and I was trying to convince her that it would probably be a better idea. She didn't want to listen about going to the, getting an ambulance. She explained to me what she thought. And at that point, I said, look, if you guys are going to leave, can you at least take my number down? And then I'll give you, and call me so I can know you got home safe. I mean, they're literally like my kid's age. So I believe she completely misunderstood me when I was speaking to her about, I didn't say that this happens in this club all the time. What I was trying to explain to her, but she was rushing about what, Sergeant Gallagher and a detective that are there right now. I work very closely with them, trying to figure out all the situations that's going on in the neighborhood and our surrounding area concerning this epidemic. So what we did was I was trying to explain to her, this is something that I want to call 911 about but I'm gonna need you. When they left in the car, I didn't understand, well, what am I gonna say when they call? Now, after speaking to Sergeant Gallagher and everything else, and with our new policy, even if they leave, we're just hitting 911 now, and we're gonna inform everyone.
Yes, I have had a meeting with the staff and the management, and from now on, there'll never be a time when something like this happens that we do not call 911. This is the first time we've been in front of the board at Legacy since we reopened, and we will work diligently and make sure that we do a little better job, and to make sure safety is top priority to all our guests.
Thank you. Chairman Joyce, any questions?
Just a comment to re-emphasize to call the police when you think something like this happened. I don't have any questions.
Commissioner
Yes,
Saxon, Commissioner. Oh, sorry.
I'm just
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just curious. Why aren't cameras facing the patrons?
The cameras are facing the bartenders and on the registers. But N11's going to be called no matter what. If
No,
there's
I understand. I understand why you face them at your cashiers, but why aren't there any cameras also facing your patrons?
We do not have them in the club.
Why not? Am I missing something?
Well, I don't know. The cameras required to be throughout the club. We just do not have them. I mean, if the board
No,
says to me,
I'm
well,
not
you should do it, that's a different story.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, dear.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they're required. I'm just asking why.
Yeah, it's been that way for a long, long time, but we just have those cameras for that. And unfortunately, this situation that's going on has to be rectified. And there's a lot of work for all nightclubs to do. And even our other clubs that we have, we are all working very hard to make sure that we take care of people, because sometimes people need help.
Commissioner Curran, do you have any questions?
Just to, second I appreciate the renewed focus on calling the police, and if there's further incidents, I don't think we'll forget that you told us that the police should have been called in this instance, but for maybe, not being clear about that they were leaving and you gave the number and all that. So I just wanted to second that. I'll be holding you to that renewed focus on calling the police.
Okay. Fair enough.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board? Board will take this under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Calling item number 7 on this morning's agenda, WNP Hong Kong at Faneuil Hall, Inc., doing business as WNP Hong Kong at Faneuil, located at 6465 Chatham Street, date of the incident February 13th, 2022. Illegal drug use on premise, patron reports being roofied inside premise in violation of Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 64. Who is present on behalf of the licensee?
I am.
Ted Lee and William Keesley.
Thank you. And who is present on behalf of the Boston Police Department?
Detective William Gallagher.
Thank you. And are there any other individuals with firsthand knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify?
Detective Hernandez if needed.
Thank you. Can you all please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Sergeant Detective Gallagher, you may proceed with the police report.
Yes, good morning, Mayor Reedy. May Boston Police Incident Report that was written by Officer Peter Garabedian. About 1:30 p.m. on Sunday, February 13th, 2022, Officer Garabedian, the Alpha Delta 96, took a walk-in report for an investigated person at 65 Chatham Street, the Hong Kong restaurant in Boston. Victim reporter, Miss Anna Kincha, stated that she believes she was drugged at the Hong Kong. Victim Kincha stated that she arrived at the Hong Kong restaurant bar on Friday, February 11th at about 9 p.m. Ms. Kincha stated that she was with friends. About 1 a.m. on Saturday morning, the group decided to leave and contracted an Uber. Ms. Kincha reports outside waiting for the Uber, she collapsed to the ground. Ms. Kincha stated that a bouncer contacted EMS, who transported her to Tufts. Ms. Kincha stated she does not recall the incident at all. Ms. Kincha stated the ER did not do a blood test. Ms. Kincha stated that her uncle is an EMT. Upon hearing the story, he tested her. The test Ms. Kincha took came back positive for opioids. Ms. Kincha was advised to keep the results of the drug test. The second report is my report. And it reads as follows: on 2/17/2022 at about 11:20 p.m., Sergeant Detective William Gallagher, Detective Eddie Hernandez, assigned to the licensed premise unit, conducted a licensed premise inspection, Hong Kong at 65 Chatham Street. This inspection came about because of an incident that took place on 2/11/2022. The victim was at the Hong Kong with some friends. Victim reported not feeling well and collapsing to the ground in front of the premise after leaving. Victim believes she was given some type of drug unknowingly. Hong Kong staff assisted the victim and called EMS, who transported the victim to Tufts New England Medical Center for treatment. These facts were relayed by the victim's friends because the victim has no memory of the incident. Victim reports the hospital did not do a drug test on her. Victim's uncle, EMT, tested her, positive results for opioids. On the evening of the 27th, detectives spoke with the manager, Bill Kinsley, who was on scene and remembers calling 911. Mr. Keesley stated that he would save any and all video for BPD. Ms. Keesley stated he will speak to all staff members about the incident. As a result of this, Sergeant Gallagher issued a license premise inspection notice number 060955 to the Hong Kong for illegal drug use on premise. Patron reports being roofied inside premise. Mr. Bill Keesley signed for and accepted the notice. Those essentially are the facts.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Keesley, would you like to address the alleged incident?
I'd like to have Mr. Bill Keesley read his statement regarding the night.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Keesley.
I was monitoring the front door of the Hong Kong. We have two entrances to the front, they're about 5 feet apart. And as I was stepping on one of them, I saw a congestion of people across the street. I took a look and there was a young lady lying on the ground. I tried talking to her, but she wasn't that responsive. So I simply called EMS right away and waited till they showed up.
May I speak? I'd like to say that this is not something we're very happy with at all. The fact that it happened in our establishment is something we take very seriously. Patron safety is something we take very seriously, especially with females. When we received the advisory some months back regarding the uptick in cases in the city, we advised our staff of the alarming presence, symptoms of drug use and things to be aware of. And we've now re-emphasized with asterisks in bold in our training to ensure that people are well aware of, and it's in the forefront that people are always thinking about the potential for this to happen. We had an opportunity to view the footage. The woman came in approximately 9 o'clock, left, I think, leave shortly after midnight, and she had some drinks, and it was not a very busy night. It wasn't very busy, it was steady, I would say. And we had approximately 8 to 11 staff members monitoring at that time. We have different trainings for our staff, our door staff security. Our first one is approximately 3 to 4 hours, and that each person who is hired undergoes a training with Bill Keesley. And in that training, we discuss de-escalation tactics, signs of impairments, how to monitor the crowds, identifying behaviors, and responding to scenarios, and female patron safety. The second forms of training that we do on a regular basis, at least monthly, where we individually with each individual security staff, we have discussions and we go through scenarios and examples, highlighting those points and others on a monthly basis. And then there's continual training that we do ongoing. As scenarios crop up, we discuss and critique the outcomes of any incidents that happen.
Thank you. Turn it to the board for any questions. Chairwoman Joyce.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Curran, Commissioner Saxon.
None from me, thanks.
Not for me either. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Board will take this under advisement. Calling item number 8, Petite Robert Inc. doing business as Petite Robert Bistro located at 480 Columbus Ave in Roxbury. Dated the incident February 17th, 2022. Persons under 21 in possession of alcohol on premise in violation of Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 34A, 34C, and 6464A. Who is present on behalf of the licensee?
Good morning, everyone. Andrew Upton for the licensee, and with me is Loic Legaric, the owner and manager of record.
Thank you. And who is present on behalf of the Boston Police Department?
I am.
Great, Detective Hernandez. Thank you. Are there any other individuals with firsthand knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify this morning?
William Gallagher, if need be.
Thank you. And Mr. Legaric, is it possible to turn your camera on so we can swear you in? There we go. Thank you. Can you all please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Detective Hernandez, you may proceed with the police report.
Good morning. I'll be reading from police report, which I wrote on Thursday, February 17, 2022. Charge Detective Will Gallagher and Detective Eddie Hernandez assigned to the deputy license premise unit conducted a license premise inspection of Petite Roxbury located at 480. Detectives observed a table of 8 patrons, some with alcoholic beverages in front of them. Detectives noticed that the 2 of these patrons appeared young, and detectives asked them to produce identification to confirm their ages. One of the patrons immediately said that he was under 21 years of age, while the other patron provided detectives with a driver's license stating he was over 21 years of age. Detectives used the license verification program, which confirmed that the driver's license was indeed fraudulent. The fraudulent driver's license contained the individual's correct name, but displayed a date of birth, which made it appear as though he was over 21 years of age. The fraudulent driver's license was confiscated by detectives. Upon further investigation, the 2 patrons were positively identified as John Duggan with a fraudulent Connecticut driver's license and Brock May with a valid Virginia identification card. Both patrons will be summoned to court for persons under 21 possession of alcohol. Mr. Duggan will additionally be summoned into court for possession of fraudulent identification. Detectives brought this to the attention of the person in charge, Mr. Loic Legaric. As a result of what detectives observed, Sergeant Detective Gallagher issued a license premise inspection notice 060956 for persons under 21 years of age, in possession of alcohol on premise, wine, and mixed drinks. Mr. Legaric signed for and accepted the notice. That's all.
Thank you, Detective. Attorney Upton, would you like to address the alleged incident?
Yes, thank you, Detective. If I may, were management and staff cooperative during this incident?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. And your report says a table of 8 patrons, some of whom had drinks. Is this to imply that some of them did not have drinks?
Yes, sir.
And the 2 underage patrons, was it clear whether or not they had their own drinks or they had been served drinks?
Well, they had drinks in front of them, sir.
But some people did not?
Yes, sir.
All right, I would like to just address the board. As everyone is aware, the quality of fake IDs has increased over the years. I think the important thing here is that the licensee asked everyone for ID. They were just fooled by a high quality fake. And in the other case, it appears someone did the math wrong. It was a busy night. It's been very, very difficult to find servers and qualified personnel for this restaurant among many others. But we are not making excuses. We immediately retrained all the staff and made them take a tips course, certificates for which I have submitted to the board. The manager had individual meetings with every employee. It's a relatively small restaurant to discuss this. And they've now instituted a new policy where anyone showing an out-of-state ID, the server is instructed to contact the manager for additional verification. So an inexperienced server cannot be fooled by a quality fake. With that, I would like to have Mr. Legaric make a brief statement, for which he will need to unmute his video.
Sorry, I'm new at this. Apologize. Yes, so the Petite Roxbury is a French bistro. So most of our clientele is from the neighborhood. They come for the food mostly. Our sales are about 65% food and 35% alcohol, mostly wine and beer. I actually did change my license in 2016 from a full liquor license to a beer and wine only, since we didn't need to have all these alcohol. Yes, so like Andrew explained, we take this situation very seriously. We retrain all the staff, even the members that had the tips training, they had to redo it. It went really well. I think we are much better informed now. And this incident, the whole table was all young people. So we did the server in charge of that table did ask for all the IDs, but he was full by the fake one, and then he misread one, I guess. So I'm sure that training is going to help us tremendously, so this doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board, beginning with Chairwoman Joyce?
I just want to confirm what I believe your attorney stated as the new policy is if there's an out-of-state ID, you call a manager to verify. Is that right?
Yes, because we believe they're a little harder to to see if they're fake or real. Because we did train the staff, as the police officer explained to us on that night. There are ways to see if the ID is a real one. But for the out of state, we think to have the manager as a second opinion will help us make the right decision.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
No questions, thank you.
None for me, thank you.
Thank you. The board will take this under advisement.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Calling item number 9, 142 Berkeley LLC, doing business as Citrus and Salt, located at 142 Berkeley Street. Date of the incident, February 18th, 2022. Persons under 21 in possession of alcohol inside premise in violation of Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 34A, 34C, and 6464A. Who is present on behalf of the licensee?
Elizabeth Barker, Assistant General Manager, Citrus and Salt.
Thank you. And who is present on behalf of the Boston Police Department?
Sergeant Detective William Gallagher.
Thank you. And are there any other individuals with firsthand knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify?
Director Hernandez needed.
Thank you. Could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank
I do.
you. Sergeant Detective Gallagher, you may proceed.
Good afternoon. I'll be reading from a police report that I wrote on 2/18/2022 at 11:54 p.m. Sergeant Detective William Gallagher, Detective Eddie Hernandez, assigned to the licensed premise unit, conducted a licensed premise inspection of Citrus and Salt at 142 Berkeley Street. Inside the premise, detectives observed 2 young-looking patrons drinking mixed alcohol drinks. Thinking that these 2 were under the age of 21, detectives approached, identified themselves as Boston Police, and requested identification. 2 females stated to detectives that they were over 21 years of age and produced identification. First female was Natasha Monroe, who produced a fraudulent Florida driver's license, making it appear that she was over 21 years of age with the date of birth of 9/13/1999. Second female was identified as Taylor Leon Guerrero, who produced a fraudulent Arizona driver's license displaying a date of birth of 7/6/1999. Detectives used a license verification program to confirm that the IDs were fraudulent. Both IDs were seized and will be presented at court. Both Ms. Monroe and Ms. Guerrero will be summoned to Boston Municipal Court for possession of fraudulent identification and possession of alcohol while under the 21 years of age. Detectives sought out the manager, Ms. Liz Barker, and informed her of their findings. As a result of what detectives had found, Sergeant Gallagher issued license premise inspection 060-959 to Citrus and Salt for persons under 21, possession of alcohol inside premise. Ms. Liz Barker signed for and accepted the notice. Those essentially are the facts.
Thank you. Ms. Barker, would you like to address the alleged incident?
Yes, so I would like to say that that did happen. Our staff did check the IDs prior. As Officer Gallagher said, they were fake. And that was brought to our attention. Since then, we have tried hiring door staff. It's been difficult to retain door staff, but we have had them on several occasions. We've trained servers on how to check for IDs. We have ID checking guide. We also are working on getting an ID scanner. And we're also planning on getting everyone tip certified as well, just to try and prevent any other further situations.
Great, thank you for that. I'll open up to the board for any questions. Chairwoman Joyce, do you have any questions?
Just want to double check. You said you're working on getting an ID scanner. Will you be having them once you do obtain them? Or is it something you're still thinking about?
So it's basically just a pricing issue with us that we have to get permission from the owners, but we're working on that. Unfortunately, the ID app that the officers showed us that evening, it's outside of our budget, but we did try to go through that process.
Okay, something to really think about, especially since you're having a hard time hiring door staff, would be to invest in something like that. That can protect you down the road. I don't have any other questions.
No questions, thank you.
Comment about the ID software that the BPD have used. We have heard in the past that other establishments that have been in contact with that company have ended up in, been made to believe that it was going to be super, super expensive, and then they got into negotiations and were able to work something out. So maybe negotiating with them might help, but I don't know specifically. I just know other establishments have reported that happening to them.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board at this time? Seeing none, the board will take this under advisement. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
These are all of the items before the board today. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.